Hey dolls, hey hot moms. I am finally sitting down to record my birth story. And also feed her because she's hungry. I am just excited to share my birth story. Like, I've always loved watching my birth story videos, and it's really exciting to get to film my own. I also want to say that I don't want to scare anyone. My birth did not go as expected at all, and I don't want anyone to be scared by what happened to me. It honestly, it was, I was for sure panicked at one point, but I'm honestly not traumatized by any of it, and I just, what happened to me, I didn't even know was possible, and so I do kind of want to spread awareness, but also just, if you're watching this and you're gonna give birth, if you're pregnant, or if you want to have a baby sometime in your life, know this can happen, but we're fine. Like, there are so many risks and things that won't go to plan, like when you are having a baby. And I honestly wasn't scared going into it. My mom had 6 of us naturally, like my siblings and me, and I was there in the room with her for my last 2 brothers being born. And they always, my mom would always graphically videotape, my siblings being born and stuff. So we grew up around that and getting to watch that. And so there wasn't this mystery for me. And I would highly suggest, if you don't have the opportunity to, be with someone when they're giving birth, go, watch videos and stuff. It's scary. It's crazy what a woman's body can do and is made to do, and it's incredible. But it's you're literally like a werewolf. If you've watched any teen romance show or anything, the way that the werewolves, when the moon is full, when their bones shift and transform, obviously it's not that dramatic, but your body, your bones literally move and shift. It's incredible. So you are supernatural, mama. Anyways, with that being said, I'm gonna get into it, but I just wanted a warning there. So I was 40 weeks and 4 days, and it was 40 weeks. I was I'm huge, I don't want to be pregnant anymore. You're just uncomfortable no matter what. And I was doing all the things to try to induce it naturally. I'm walking curbs, I'm bouncing on the ball, I'm eating dates, drinking castor oil, trying all the things. So I got my membranes stripped, I think right at 40 weeks, on my due date. And Coco quiet. And that definitely helped get things started a little bit, but I wasn't in active labor at it. I definitely started having contractions, but it wasn't there all the way yet. So 3 days later, I think that was on a Monday, and so I was all right, let's, I'm over it, I want to get induced. And I was gonna get on a Pitocin drip, and I was if it's more painful, it's more painful. Whatever happens, happens. I wasn't planning an all natural birth, really. I was working with the midwives at UK, and I fully planned on having a pain drip to take the edge off. Truthfully, an epidural scared the crap out of me. That was in my birth plan to not have one, because being numb in any way, even if I go to the dentist or have microneedling done, being numb is not my favorite. It really freaks me out. So I was having half of my body numb sounded terrifying. So that wasn't in my birth plan, but I wasn't opposed to pain medication. So that's where I was like, whatever happens with the Pitocin. Well, my induction kept getting moved back because women were going into labor naturally and they needed the room. So like totally understood. It's still super like disappointing because like the call happened 1 hour before I was supposed to go to the hospital and get induced. So then it's just like really frustrating or whatever. So a day or two later, I went to triage in the hospital I wanted my membrane stripped again because that kind of helped things get moving. And so that happened. I got that done pretty late in the evening, nighttime, and that got things started, and then we went to sleep. And like I slept through the night, there weren't really any contractions. And then kind of that next day, my sister had already spent the night that night, and Carter was home, obviously, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna hunker down and go into labor right now, like today. So I did. I just sat on my ball. I probably did take like a curb walk or two that morning, and then I just got on the ball and things were happening, and they were happening frequently and consistently. So, you know, we got the contraction tracker app, which is great. It's free. You should totally use it. We used that, and as things were getting closer and closer, like, because I knew I wanted to labor as long as possible at home, and so I did, and then I was like, well, I'm gonna take a nice hot shower, be nice and clean, and I know showers can help move things along. So did that, and it was great. Like I was like in the shower having to stop, breathe through contractions, and like finally got out of the shower, and my sister actually broke a glass on her foot in the kitchen, and so Carter's like running around trying to check on me while I'm trying to get ready and having contractions and help my sister clean up glass, and my sister was panicking because she felt bad, and it was just a whole thing. Anyways, so that was not really necessary to the story, but it's nice. I'll be happy to come back and like remember all these little details. So I get dressed, you know, called the midwives, let them know that we are gonna be like on our way. The hospital was like 7 minutes away from us. Okay, so we arrive at the hospital, we walk up to triage, and the lady, and like we're checking in, and the lady checking us in is immediately setting bad vibes. It was close to shift change, which we didn't know, but also that shouldn't matter. It's like just such a life-changing experience already, like whether you're gonna have your first or your fifth, you know, like you're having a baby, it's already like a high stress, anxious time, even if it's a happy anxiety, you know, there's just like, you shouldn't take it out on a pregnant woman, anyone, but immediately she's like, there's no room for you, because this is the week that every woman in Lexington, Kentucky is going into labor and having their babies, which is great, but also like she's like, there's no room for you. You can labor in the waiting room, and like you can walk around the hallways if you want. And so I'm like, oh my god, how long am I gonna be here? Like, am I gonna have the baby in the waiting room? Like, I'm like, I'd literally rather go home and have the baby, you know, like you've got all these thoughts going through your head or whatever. And I was like, also like furious, like, how dare you be rude? Anyways, so we actually ended up getting called back pretty quickly, but it wasn't even in a triage room, which is like a little like checkup room. It was recovery, which is like a curtain room where there's a bunch of curtains, and like, anyways, so we're sitting there, which like, okay, still like really not what you're expecting, but we get in there, we're getting checked in, the nurses are like coming in, asking questions, like asking what my birth plan is, what my pain management plan is, and you know, I was like, well, I definitely want, like, can you tell me about like the different like pain management options? I don't really want an epidural, But like I would like some sort of drip, and I really wanted hydration and an IV. Those were important to me. And so I was like, you know, whatever. And she just like never came back. Like didn't give me any pain medicine. They've got me hooked up. Like they've got me sitting on this like uncomfortable bed, and I was like, I was like, Carter, like switch me. He's like in a chair. I was like, switch me. I want to sit in a chair. My midwife isn't able to come see me for 2 hours because she was helping another mama push her baby out and deliver her baby, which is great. I was like rooting for her the whole time, but like I don't know, you know, the hospital rules. I don't know this or that. I know like at some point someone was probably gonna yell at me to stop eating, and I didn't know if I was allowed to eat yet or not. So like we brought snacks because I was like, I will absolutely sneak snacks to nourish myself. And so I'm literally eating Cheez-Its out of Carter's pocket because I'm scared someone's gonna come in and yell at me to not eat. And I'm drinking Gatorade, which the last few weeks of my pregnancy and labor and recovery while I was in the hospital, Gatorade was my favorite thing ever. So anyways, I'm so stressed and annoyed, and like just it's so much negativity. And Carter doesn't know what to do. He's, you know, starting to get upset that I'm upset, and that like it's just like no one's explaining anything to us, all this stuff. And then right before my midwife comes in, and we're able to talk to her and everything, shift change happens, and the most angelic nurse, I can't even remember her name, angelic nurse, I hear her talking to another couple, and she's like explaining everything that's going on, telling the mom, like she tells the husband, she's like, you go up to the cafeteria and you get yourself some food, and you need to bring that mama back some food, because, you know, she's gonna need her strength, she needs nourishment. And I'm like, oh my, okay, so we're allowed to eat. And then she comes over to us, and I'm like crying. I'm like, I just heard you talking to them, like you're such an angel, like, you know, this is what happened with the nurses, like I told them I wanted some pain management, and like they just never came back, like they just, like, you know, didn't talk to us, didn't communicate anything. And she was like, I am so sorry. She was like, you are allowed to have, like, you will not be denied anything here. Like, if you needed an epidural in the hallway, you know, technically we could do it. And obviously I wasn't to that point, but I was like, honestly, I was like, I kind of want to go home, you know, for a little bit. Like my contractions have slowed down. Like this is the worst experience so far, up until you've, you know, come in here and explain stuff. And she like printed out, like I was attached to like the fetal heart rate monitor, and so she was like, let me print out like her heart rate for you so you can have it for her baby book. And she was like, which was so sweet, and she was like, you can eat food, like you're like, you do what you've got to do. And at that point, that's when my midwife comes in. And I was like, can I go home? I was like, am I a bad mom for like wanting to leave the hospital right now? She was like, no, you can go home. She was like, you can go home, like go home. Maybe, she was like, maybe that's what you need to do. You're really stressed out. Like, she was like, in the wild, you know, if like an animal's stressed out, like it's like labor's gonna stall. She was like, go home. She was like, eat a nice meal, calm down, maybe get some sleep if you can, and then, you know, come back whenever you need. She was like, do you want some pain? She was like, do you want some pain management? And they were able to give me a morphine shot, and I think they gave me something for nausea in case the morphine made me nauseous, and that really didn't do a whole lot for me. Once I did go home, we come home, my mother-in-law brings me my favorite food. We're just all hanging out, my mother-in-law, my husband, my sister, one of my brothers and his wife, because they were gonna stay and watch the dogs. And so we are just hanging out. Carter's kind of tired. He was like, I think I might try to go to sleep. And I feel like maybe we were home 2 hours, and I was like, these contractions are picked right back up. I'm not getting any sleep. Let's go on back, because I figured it would be a little bit more waiting again, before we got like our room for labor and delivery. And so we got there, We waited in the waiting room a little bit longer, but I wasn't as anxious. The lady who checked us in was different, and she was like just neutral, you know. And I knew like a little bit more what to expect if it was, again, worst case scenario for like where we were going to be sitting for a few hours. But we ended up getting in the triage, and which still wasn't the labor and delivery room, but it was better. And my midwife was available to talk to me more and get me more comfortable. A nurse and I guess a student came in to get my IV in my arm, and I'm not bad with needles. I just have to like watch it go in, and this was the biggest needle I've ever seen go in my arm, and the student did it, which really didn't bother me, and she wasn't hurting me. She just was new at it, and so she's like digging around in my arm, which I was just staying calm. I would tell her, you know, like, I'm having a contraction, I need you to stop and sit still. And so we'd like all like chill for a few seconds, and then I'd be like, you can go back to it. And then eventually the nurse had to take over, but Carter was like dying, about to like he couldn't handle watching this girl digging around in my arm. But had I known that IV was gonna be in my arm until the moment I left the hospital, I may have felt differently, because it was kind of like bruised and stuff. Like whatever. So I'm getting some fluids, like I've got like the saline and stuff for hydration, and we started, I cannot remember what it's called, just some medicine to take the edge off, and it did take the edge off for like an hour or so, but by that point it was late at night, like probably around midnight, and I'd already been laboring all day, so I was pretty tired, and the anesthesiologist came into the triage room I think they have to do it with everyone, just to, you know, give you all of your options, and he in depth explained what an epidural was, how they did it, if, you know, an emergency C-section was necessary, how it would go down and everything. And he was just like, we just really liked his personality, and I think like it was just nice to have someone to talk to, and he was like really educational, or educating us on it, knowledgeable. So even though I didn't want an epidural, like it was just nice to know all about it and have him in there to talk to us. And by that point the pain medicine I did have was wearing off, and they couldn't give it to me again for like another hour or two. So by that point I was like, I think I need an epidural, because I was at 4 centimeters dilated, and I was not going to be able to sleep through the contractions, and I needed to be able to get rest in order to have the energy to push, like physically and mentally. But this was definitely like the scariest part for me. I was like, all right, I'm gonna get an epidural. I decided in the triage room, and then since they knew that I was about to have a labor and delivery room, we were gonna wait until we were in there. So I got into my room, and I like went to go pee, and honestly I was trying to poop too, because I probably pooped like at some point that day already, but I was like, I knew, like, I didn't care if like I pooped while I was pushing and giving birth or whatever, but I was like, an epidural, like I could poop my pants, like not my pants, I'm not wearing any pants. I was like, I'm gonna poop myself, and I couldn't poop. So like I came out of the bathroom after peeing, and the first thing I said to him and the nurse was, am I gonna poop on myself? And they were like, no. And I was like, are you sure? Like, if I can't feel down there, like, are you sure? You're just saying that. In fact, I did not poop. In fact, I did not poop for 7 more days, but that's another story. I didn't even poop while pushing. which like, again, it's something that can happen. I really didn't care. At first I thought the midwives, like when I was like, afterwards I was like, did I poop? And they were like, no. I thought they were lying to me, cause like just trying to be considerate, but I was like, no, genuinely, I just want to know. And Carter was like, no, like you really didn't poop. Anyways, it feels like you're pooping yourself, whether you actually are or not. So, I digress. They're like, no, you're not gonna poop. And, this was like really I was not afraid of childbirth like I was getting an epidural. And it wasn't the needle that I was afraid of. It was genuinely the numbness that I was gonna feel was freaking me out. So I get up on the bed, you know, they've got my back all opened up or whatever. Or like, when I say my back opened up, I mean I was wearing a nightgown instead of a, like a dressing gown, a hospital gown. And so, you know, he's explaining to me what is happening, what I'm gonna feel, this and that. Carter and the nurse are both holding my hands. This is a different nurse now. I don't quite remember this nurse's name either. There are a few nurses that were like life-changing and I'll never forget them, whether I forget their names or not, but and I'm like crying. I'm like calmly crying, and just like really scared, and you know, he's telling me he's about to place the needle, and I did flinch, just because it freaked me out, and I don't think I've never had a shot of any kind where I couldn't physically see it, so that probably didn't help. But anyway, so I flinched and like tried to like regain my composure, and he was like so skilled at what he was doing, and that didn't affect him. He just let me calm down again. And he gave it to me and explained that it happens, that like the epidural works with gravity, and so like if I'm laying, like if I'm like sitting on my butt, it's gonna be like more on my butt, or like if I'm like laying on my sides, like I've got to switch sides every now and then because it could like be more prevalent on one side, if that makes sense. So to rotate regularly or whatever. And at first it really only did work on one side, and they had talked about breaking my water and giving me a catheter and stuff, and I was like, you know, I think I'd rather wait until like I'm fully numb at this point. And it also wasn't like I was paralyzed. They kind of do a lighter epidural, which I appreciated. You can still, like, I could still wiggle my toes even though I couldn't really feel them. And even at one point I remember I got a Charlie horse, and I couldn't, like, you know, maneuver my legs on my own to stretch it out. So I was like, hey, I've got a Charlie horse, can you like stretch it out for me really fast? And they were like, you do? Like, how could you even, like, you can still feel stuff, like you can't like necessarily feel like to the touch, like if you poked yourself, but like I couldn't like move, like if I had to like switch sides while I was sleeping, or like woke up and switch sides to sleep more comfortably, like I definitely still needed help. My upper body strength and core were able to move me most of the way, but to like get in certain positions, or like they'd put like a peanut ball in between my legs to help with the baby's position or whatever. But anyways, from that point, like I felt really good, I wasn't anxious, and I just slept. Like, so whatever time that was, which it was probably like somewhere in between like midnight and 2, and then I slept all through the night, slept most of the day. And at that point, I didn't want to eat anything, like I didn't have an appetite. I don't know if that was just labor in general, or the epidural, or both. But, oh, let me go back. So they broke my water for me when only half of my body was numb, but it wasn't uncomfortable at all. And then once I was fully numb, they gave me the catheter, which, for a hydration goddess like myself, was incredible, to drink as much as I wanted and not have to get up and pee. Later on, afterwards, I was like, do you guys actually just want to leave that in? Like, I could get used to this. Anyways, so they broke my water and gave me a catheter. And like I said, slept for so long, and then I think then like late in the morning is when my sister came, because I wanted her to be there. Originally, I wanted my mom and Carter's mom to be there. I've obviously been with my mom, and then me and Carter's mom are best friends. And just kind of was like right before, I was just like, you know, actually, I don't think, I was like, actually, moms, I don't want you guys here after all. Or like, it's not that I didn't want them there, I just wanted, you know, I just listened to what I wanted, basically. And I knew I had no worries that they would be upset. Like, I knew that they would just be completely understanding, and they both were, you know, they were like, yep, whatever you need, mama. And my sister has this weird food sensitivity to like certain meat. If she eats out certain places, she gets an insane migraine and like literally blacks out, loses vision, and is just like nauseous and sick, you know, for like a day or whatever. Like, it's really intense. And she starts to feel one coming on. And so immediately, like, I'm bummed that she's gonna have to go home and like not be there for the birth. And I know she was so disappointed. So she had my mom come pick her up, and then I just slept for a little bit longer. And then by some miracle, she felt better within hours, and I hadn't started pushing or anything yet. So she actually was able to come back, which was really exciting, because I knew that she would be like really disappointed. Like, of course I would be upset that she wasn't there, but it was gonna be more disappointing for her, especially since she wasn't there to see any of my siblings being born. Anyways, so even though she was there, I think her and Carter probably hung out for a little bit, and I slept some more. And I don't remember exactly what time things started happening, but I was, you know, it's crazy that like the epidural definitely helped because I wasn't feeling it as much, but that your body just like, you know, goes through the motions. It's like, it felt like check marks. I was like, all right, this centimeter, this centimeter, this centimeter, and you know, I'm at 10 centimeters finally, and my midwives come in and they're like, all right, you ready to start pushing? And I'm like, hell yeah. Before I get into the pushing part, they had like the fetal heart rate monitor on my stomach, which we had to adjust every time I rolled over or something, and then they had an arm, like a blood pressure cuff on my arm, which, had I thought about it before, because they like, I was like trying to sleep with it and it's kind of uncomfortable, I would have just, because it only comes on every 30 minutes, so I would have taken it off and it's like set a timer and then put it back on whenever it needed to take my blood pressure, and then afterwards I mentioned that idea and the nurse was like, oh yeah, some people do that, like I could have done that. So I was like, oh darn. But then again, I might have been sleeping longer than that anyway, so it just is what it is. And the only, and so like I had like my epidural, I had my IV because I wanted fluids, and just lost my train of thought. And the only other thing that I knew was gonna happen, because I had I was positive for strep B, was I would have to have antibiotic, and they had to give it to me like every 4 hours, and I was there long enough to have it 4 or 5 times, which doesn't seem like a thing, but like it was burning my arm when it would go in, like the fluid, like it just stayed, like the IV or whatever, they just hook it up, but like it burned for whatever reason, which they said was normal. So like I was just like whining about that because that sucked. So I'd be like, push it through faster so like I can just have it over with faster. And so those were the only things that I forgot to mention. So the midwives come in, I've got my epidural or whatever, so like I'm still like, at this point we're like gonna let the epidural taper off while I'm pushing and everything. And so, you know, I'm doing everything the midwives are telling me. I've communicated with them that I would like to not tear to the best of our abilities. Carter had given me some perineum massage like in the weeks leading up to it, but like it really sucked, and I honestly was like, I don't think this is that beneficial to do it so much beforehand, but like while I was pushing, like actively pushing, they were, you know, massaging the perineum and like stretching me out and using warm compresses so that, and I thought that made much more sense to me, to have it happening in the moment. And also I would like to note that I was not working with one single midwife. The UK midwives clinic had 5 or 6 that I would meet with throughout my pregnancy at like each however many months or weeks leading up to my labor and delivery. And so the night that we got in was one midwife, and then the next day it was actually a midwife and one of the newer midwives to the practice. So I actually had 2 there with me, so that was actually really nice. You know, they're helping me get into any position, and I'm pretty much up for anything. I'm like, whatever you guys say, I'm gonna try. And so I was able to like kind of get more onto all 4s, and at one point kind of just on my knees and like leaning against the bed in a squatting position, and you know, just communicating what I wanted, what I was feeling. Towards the beginning I wasn't really, I did end up getting on Pitocin, I think, for the last 1 or 2 centimeters. And so, and my epidural was still there, so I wasn't quite able to feel if I was having a contraction or not, but I finally did figure out, because I guess I had a contraction monitor too, because I'd look over at the nurse, or like wait till she told me I was having a contraction to start pushing, or I would ask, be like, am I having a contraction? I could start to feel the tightness in the top of my stomach if I put my hand there, because I was, you know, the epidural was still on there, I'm numb, like I couldn't feel that I was having a contraction aside from the tightness in my stomach. And so just communicating with them, and they were holding my legs up. Carter would take a turn and hold a leg at one point, or Grace, my sister, and like when I was like pushing like more on my back. And I started out strong, you know, and you know, excited, and they could see the head. And it's crazy how long it takes to push a baby out when you can still see the head. You know, my sister thankfully was taking videos and stuff, graphic videos, and I did we videoed the entire thing, none of which YouTube will see, you know, because that wasn't why we were doing it. It was just to look back and like show her, or like anyone that wanted to watch it in the family who was gonna, you know, have a baby later on. Because my mom always did that, and we always enjoyed it for educational purposes and sentiment. But anyways, so I started out like I mean I was going strong. I pushed for 2.5 hours, and at that point, I was getting tired. The epidural was completely worn off. I was, you know, getting more and more uncomfortable. There's literally a baby's head inside of your vagina. Your body's trying to push it out. You're trying to push it out, you know. I'm so physically tired at this point, because if you think about it, you know, you haven't done certain, like whether you worked out or not, you haven't done certain workouts, you know, abdominal workouts, in a very long time, because you've been pregnant. And it was doing 2.5 hours of, you know, crunches, sit-ups, you know, you're engaging your core so much, you're pushing that baby out, and like you're picking your neck up. My neck and shoulders and abs were so sore after childbirth, like, because you go from 0 to like boot camp, you know. So something I hadn't considered, being sore the next day, feeling like I worked out, which wouldn't have been as bad if I didn't end up having a C-section. So it's 2.5 hours of pushing, and she's pretty far, you know, like her head's there, you can see she's got hair, you know. So I'm super uncomfortable. I'm in pain at this point. I know I am. I don't quite remember I don't quite remember what kind of pain I was in, but also I'm frustrated and tired, and I'm like, help me get this baby out. I'm like laying on my back. I feel the tears, like I can feel the tears running down my like cheeks and eyes and stuff. And I'm like, I know I'm like crying out. I'm like, please help me get the baby out. Like, I've heard of people like using forceps or whatever. Like, I'm like, literally whatever, like, please help me get this baby out. And at that point, when I'm feeling the tears, I'm like, I'm glad I ended up not doing my makeup, because I brought all of my makeup. I had been laying out all summer with SPF so that I could be tan, because I knew I wanted to be tan but not spray tanned for child, like delivering a baby, because that's like spray tan, sweat, bodily fluid, that was just gonna all be all over the place. These are things that I think about. Anyways, so I brought all my makeup. I actually pulled out my camera and started vlogging. You know, I was gonna do my glam, you know. And Carter had gone to get himself some food, so I actually, I have an epidural, so I can't get up and walk, and I wasn't about to call the nurse in to get my beauty blender wet. So I was like, you know what, I'll just wait until he gets back and I'll have him get my beauty blender wet so I can even start my makeup. And by that point, I was actually like, you know what, I just pulled my hair up into a ponytail and put like a cute bow in, and I was like, I'm just not gonna do makeup. I'm glad I didn't, because by the end of it I was crying, and I'm sure I was sweating too, but I ended up needing a C-section. So what has happened, the baby is stuck, her head is stuck in my pelvic bone, right? I think I'm saying that right. She's stuck, her head is stuck, it's not her shoulder, it's her head. And I've been working with the midwives and obviously the nurses in there, who, by the way, has stayed past her, is like 2 hours late into her shift ending, okay? We talked about it before, because I was like, are you leaving at 7, you know? And she was like, I honestly might stay. She was like, I need the extra money anyways, and she was vibing with us, which I so appreciate her staying, because it was nice to have someone who had already been laboring with, and been there taking care of me all day, to stay with us until the end. So I'm like, please help me get this baby out. And I am still not traumatized by, honestly, I'm not traumatized by it, which it would be totally within my rights to be traumatized. But I think my sister Grace and Carter were far more traumatized, you know, being helpless in the situation and seeing me work so hard and then cry out, like, to help me. I would be much more traumatized watching them go through it than, you know, being the one going through it, because even though childbirth is unknown and scary, like, there's this, you know what's coming, you know, it's gonna be, there's pain involved, you know, like, I was ready for that part. But, so I'm like, help me get this baby out. And they're like, okay, there's this OB that is volunteered, if you're okay with it, if you consent, an OB has volunteered to come help. He's the guy that can get babies out. He's got magic fingers, he can pull babies out. And I'm like, we can absolutely get him in here. And so he comes in, and, you know, I will say that every single, not just the midwives, all the medical staff did an incredible job of communicating, making sure I was consenting, you know, telling me what they were doing, like explaining it, which I appreciate, and I know that that is not everyone's experience, and honestly that's what I expected. That's why I preferred to work with the midwives. Anyways, so he comes in, I've already got this baby's head coming out of my vagina, and this man takes both of his hands and gets them into my vagina and somehow around the baby's head, or partly, and he was, you know, trying to pull her head out, which is insane. And Carter's like, I didn't even know there was enough room in there to get all of that in there, but okay, you know. And I know that part probably hurt, but whenever you're just like when you're already like in so much pain, it's just like, oh, let's 2 more hands in there or whatever. And he was unable to pull her out. The way that her head was turned and stuck on my pelvic bone, he couldn't get around her eye, and he obviously didn't want to hurt her eye or get a finger in her eye socket or whatever. And so so at that point, and another anesthesiologist has come in, and I think there's several other people in the room at this point, which again, you really don't care about. Like me specifically, I could probably have 50 people watching me, and I don't care on a normal day, but by that point, you really don't care. I am mentally like, okay, he can't pull this baby out. I'm gonna need a C-section. So I kind of give myself a moment to grieve. Not just the fact that like this isn't how I planned it. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it was my vanity. I was like, I'm gonna have a giant scar on my stomach. I will never have a flat stomach again. Like, shed a tear for my vanity. I'm just being completely honest. Because at that point, I was like, I know that I'm gonna come out of this fine, and the baby's gonna be fine, and we're gonna be healthy in the end. That was not my concern. My concern was my vanity. And so they are like, and so then I hear the OB that has come in say, you know, okay, well, we've got a few minutes, but we need to talk about considering a C-section. And I was like, yeah, like that the baby's got to come out. So C-section it is. And I'm for sure not as bubbly and humorous as I am right now, but I was like, you know, crying and in pain and like, yes, get this baby out of me, please help me get this baby out of me. And so they wheel me out of the room, and I hope I did not traumatize any mothers as I was getting wheeled out, because I know that I was still just like screaming uncontrollably, get this baby out of me, help me please, some variation of that. And also my poor husband and my poor sister. Anyways, so I get into the OR, and so Carter's scrubbing in, and my two midwives are scrubbing in. So I'm in there, like 40, 50 like nurses, doctors, OBs, like multiples of everything. Anesthesiologists are in there, and you know, prepping the room, prepping me, and they have to move me to the operating table from my bed, so they picked me up with a sheet because I couldn't move. But I look over and I see the anesthesiologist that gave me my epidural, and I was like, please hold my hand. And so he's holding my hand, you know, like I'm panicking, I'm crying and all this. The anesthesiologist is the only familiar face in the OR at this point, so I'm like, hold my hand, and I look at him, I'm like, eye contact, I'm like, if you cannot get my pain under control very quickly, you will have to knock me out. And him and the other anesthesiologist, they were like, I mean, everyone was so great in that room. They were like, it won't come to that, we'll get it under control. And I'm in a lot of pain right now. And because I have successfully pushed her out so far, but not far enough, so far, they have to push her back inside of me. I've never heard of that. So there's that. So they have to push her back inside of me. And I'm like, well, like, yeah, obviously whatever you gotta do, you gotta do. Everyone is answering all of my questions, making me feel heard and safe. You know, anytime I ask for someone to hold my hand, like 15, like someone's holding my hand down my arm, like everyone's trying to make me feel good. Someone had me sit up, I had to drink something. They're getting my epidural, you know, pumping it back through. And you hear them be like, how much does she weigh? Like, how much more can we give her, you know? And so they're also still having to prep me for surgery. So I have to get into uncomfortable positions, which is lying straight on my back with my legs out in front of me. Which, like, if you have like the worst period cramps you can imagine, you're probably getting close to like what contractions feel like or whatever, but it's so uncomfortable that you have to lay like that. But that's just like what they have to do in order to be like, you know, they're about to operate on me. But unfortunately, you know, the epidural is not working fast enough, and like I said before, it's working with gravity. So if I'm flat on my back, I can feel my butt cheeks getting numb, but like I'm not feeling my vagina get numb, I'm not feeling my stomach get numb, like where I think they're gonna have to give me an incision, you know. So like several things are going through my head. But so they have to push her back inside of me, and I felt that, which sucked. And I don't even know what to tell you. It feels like I can't describe it because I don't remember. Like, it just sucked. Like, it's already like she's there, it hurts, everything hurts, and then they pushed her back in. They gave me a catheter again, and anyways, they're laying me flat on my back, and I'm like, can I please sit up for like a second? Like, I just need some relief. And they're like, we're so sorry, like we just don't have time. And I'm like, okay. And so the 2 anesthesiologists they've got oxygen on me, and I'm for sure hyperventilating at this point, and I'm like, I can't breathe, and they're like, you can. They're like, this is the best like air you can get right now. And I'm like, can you just take it off just for a second? Like, I need to take a big breath. And so they're like, of course. And like, you know, like I take a breath or two, and I think my midwives are in there at this point, and because I think at least one of them is holding my hand, and I'm like looking at my good old friend anesthesiologist. I'll remember his full name forever, but I won't share it. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, because they're poking around and stuff, and I'm like, I can still feel that, and I'm like, if you cut me open while I can feel it, I will die. I was like, I will perish right here. So I'm like holding my anesthesiologist. I got his face right in front of me, and I'm like, you have to knock me out. And he was like, your husband won't be able to come in if you're knocked out. And I was like, reassure him I'm okay, you know, like we're good to go. So they're like, okay, we're gonna put the mask, or they've got the mask back on me, and he's like, all right, you're gonna feel some warmth in your throat when you breathe. And I think I took 2 breaths, and that's the last thing I remember. And so at that point, I mean, probably like, I think Carter said by the time I even left the labor and delivery to when they called him in to meet his daughter, that it was like 5 minutes. So I was out, they got the baby out, and I will say, if I'm never doing this again. I really only wanted 1 kid to begin with, but I especially will not be going through pregnancy, labor and delivery, or, you know, breastfeeding and pumping again, because I love her so much, but I don't want to sacrifice my body anymore. And you really have to want you really have to want to have more kids to go through all that again. Anyways, so for you mamas planning for your labor and or your birth plan, might I suggest, because I did in my birth plan, I did have, you know, in case of a C-section, that obviously wasn't my first thing, but basically everything I had in it was, it didn't matter because I was knocked out. But had I known this now, and it just worked out, but if you are in your birth plan, even if you're planning on pushing, in your emergency, if you have like an in case of C-section, put in there that you would like a nurse to have your phone and take pictures. So like maybe just take your password off during that time. Thankfully, thankfully a nurse, not the one that was working with us, thankfully a nurse went into the labor and delivery room, asked my sister for a phone for her to take pictures, and luckily my sister knew my password, And, well, I guess you don't need a password in order to take photos and videos. Anyways, and went in there and took some not graphic photos of the C-section happening. There's some live photos, like kind of from a distance, where they're getting her out of me, which I totally would have appreciated, like really graphic ones, but I can understand why most people probably don't want that. And she got live photos of Carter meeting his daughter for the first time, which I missed. There are very few things that make me sad about the whole experience and it not going my way, and missing him meeting her and missing him cut her umbilical cord makes me really sad. But I have live photos of the whole thing, and like she's laying there and he's cutting her umbilical cord and she's just staring at him like she's found her dad, which is really precious. And they were like, you know, they took her footprints and they were like, do you want her footprint on the back of your hand? And so he's getting to like walk around with her footprint on his hand. And like, I'm glad that he got to, you know, meet her so quickly, even though I know he was so worried about me. You know, I'm unconscious, and when I left it was not great. But he got to meet her. He didn't get to stay in the nursery with her to do skin to skin because there was a compromised baby in there that they couldn't risk, which was totally fine. And unfortunately, my sister and Carter weren't even able to be with each other to comfort each other. I think my sister pretty quickly, they took her to like the room where we were going to be staying, and she took all of our stuff. And I don't know how long Carter was away from me before I went into the recovery room. The contact nap it is, because it's only because I'm talking so much, because normally she'll sleep for like ever, even with all the noises, but I'm talking really loud right now, I guess. So this is the part where the timeline, I have no idea about anything. What I remember waking up for the first time was in fact not the first time I'd woken up. Poor Carter has, you know, been watching me be in crazy pain for like an hour by the time I remember it, which I think that's good, because that could have been more traumatizing. But so what I remember is I'm waking up in the recovery again, which is like the curtain room, and I look over and Carter is by my bedside bawling his eyes out, and I am in so much pain and nauseous. I can't even comfort him. I'm like, you see me, I'm alive. That's good enough. And so I'm like, I'm in pain, I'm gonna throw up, I'm nauseous, someone get me some, I'm like, someone get my pain under control, someone, and I'm probably crying this too, but I'm being very like, help me. The anesthesiologist, same one, comes in and he's like, I'm gonna get your pain under control. And I'm like, fucking angel. And so the pain does get under control, and something that I knew that would happen after having a baby was that they would have to push on my stomach to make sure there's not like blood clots or whatever. And I've always, you know, heard people say how uncomfortable that is, or how painful that is. And having that happen after a C-section when you're so raw and like you just had surgery was brutal. I know Carter said that had already happened a couple of times before, and I was like begging her to stop. But when I remember, I was like, I guess aware enough that I was like, I know this has to happen, but like crying out in pain because that hurt so bad. And they did bring me something to throw up in, but I ended up not needing to throw up. I don't know if it was like, you know, getting knocked. I think they said it was because like getting knocked out or whatever like can make you throw up after. It's just so much happening to your body. So they finally get my pain under control, and because like at this point I can only worry about myself, you know. and like I'm finally like calm and like more comfortable. And you know, talking to Carter, and you know, he's just so worried and glad that I'm like alive and okay. And he's like, I met our daughter. He's like, I have pictures, do you want to see? Here's the footprint, or her footprint on my hand. He was like, do you want to see pictures? And I was like, no, I don't want to see pictures. I want to meet her. Like, I want to see her and meet her for the first time, like in real life. And he was like, we had a big baby. And I was like, we did? We had a big baby, okay. And to be fair, when he first met her and those pictures of her first coming out, she's like swollen. Like, her features aren't correct yet. Like, I was like, because like even a few hours after, like when I met her, she had some of the swelling had gone down. That's the only thing I can think of to describe it, is swollen. But even a few hours later when I met her, she was still kind of like swollen, because I was like, I was like, I don't recognize this baby, but like, why would I? Because I've never met her. But also I was like, she just didn't quite look like herself yet. And I met her, they brought her, or we went into like our room where we were going to be staying for a little bit at that point. Okay, so Carter has gone home to get me food and the colostrum we've got stored up to feed the baby. And the nurse is like, do you want to breastfeed, or want to try to breastfeed? And I was like, yes, absolutely, I want to try. And so she's helping me, and I'm like, please make sure, like, you know, check if she has any lip ties, tongue ties, cheek ties, anything, because we want to, you know, be on top of that. And she did mention that her top lip was a little bit tight, so Carter, as he was feeding her the next few days, would just massage it and kind of stretch it a little bit, and we've not had a problem. So that night, I mean, I'm so physically exhausted. I've been laboring for days, pushed for 2.5 hours, have been through surgery, you know. All of my guts have been taken out, cleaned up, and put back in, and I've been sewn up. So anyways, I've got the baby on me. The meds are still good and strong at this point, I guess. I'm like I'm like trying to breastfeed. I'm also like exhausted and tired, and like I'm like half out of it. And the nurse is like, can I help you? Like, you know, everyone, they're big on consent, which as you should be. And I'm like, literally do whatever you need to, and you can help me feed my baby. I don't care. And this precious nurse is like milking my boobs for me, getting colostrum into a plastic spoon and feeding my baby. And Grace is in there too, I guess, still. And I'm like, just over and over, like, thanks so much for milking me. Anyways, so that first night, it's 5 a.m. after all of that. I've not had any sleep for hours and hours after all of that physical trauma. And I never thought I would have them take the baby to the nursery, which is actually where she already was while she was waiting for me to get out of surgery, you know. And then, so they were like, do you want us to take her? And I was like, yeah, like, I literally can't even, I can barely hold her right now. And so they took her for a few hours, and they brought her back in, you know, because we had to sleep. And this is my firstborn. So, are you the oldest? So, the first day, I mean, like, I was just kind of like dazed. I think I still had my, still had the, not colostrum, shoot, what's it called? My catheter in. So I'm able to stay a hydrated queen and not have to get up. I think it was either the first or the second night is whenever I stood up for the first time, and like they, I don't know if it's just after a C-section or if it's after like any, like if it's after vaginal birth too, but the nurses like had to like watch, like see my first pee and how much pee, and then I was able to take a shower. Well, I was able to sit in the shower, and Carter bathed me from head to toe, which was like, I mean, I couldn't do it myself, and it's just amazing to have a partner to love me so much that he could help like that. And so there were 2 nurses in there. Grace is hanging out. Again, this is like a day or 2 later. Grace was over like every day hanging out. And so like it was just like a lot of me healing and trying to sleep, and like I am too uncomfortable to lay on my sides, which is normally how I sleep, or my stomach, and obviously it's too uncomfortable for that. So like I'm trying to like sleep back but inclined and like on the hospital beds, and it was just like a weird environment. I'm on drugs, and like it was just like not the best sleep. But I would sleep like on and off through the night and during the day. And like my family would, like our families were coming to meet her and stuff, and somebody was always there to help us, you know, take care of her, because I physically wasn't able to. I did not change a single diaper when we were in the hospital. Yeah, we were home by the time I changed a diaper. I've changed many diapers in my lifetime, but hers. So, but those were Carter's first diapers he had changed, and he dealt with the meconium and everything, which they suggested, or like I saw in someone's hospital bag video, to bring Aquaphor and put Aquaphor on their butt, so that like when they pooped, it was easier to wipe off, because that meconium is sticky and stuff apparently. So we were in the hospital like I think a total of 5 days from like when we checked in to when we got to leave. They kept me a day later because of like I don't know if it was just the surgery or like I just depending on like how I was doing, because I did push for so long. I don't know if that, I don't know. I'm glad that they didn't let me leave until that point, because I definitely needed all the extra help I could get. And then that last day, like I took a shower, we were about to check out, my milk came in, and we went home to where my family and some of our friends had like cleaned the house, mowed the lawn, had "It's a Girl" sign outside, and just hung out for a little bit. And then we were exhausted and also really excited to be home. So those first couple days home were really nice, because we were just so excited to be home, and then we were staying up late and like just hanging out. Anyways, also something that, I mean, I only know about C-section recovery at this point. I kind of got to experience both vaginal and C-section, because I got her so far out and then they had to push her back in. Thankfully I did not tear, because what luck that would have been, to tear and then have a C-section. That would have sucked. But no, I only have a giant incision. It's actually not giant. It's impressive that an incision so small you can pull out a baby, and how like skin is so elastic that it can pull apart a little bit and then come back together. Anyways, even while we were still in the hospital, like C-section recovery is brutal. I felt like I was never not going to feel pain again, while simultaneously irrationally worrying that I was going to be addicted to painkiller. I am not. I could never, because it constipates you. We'll get to that too. So I'm so sore in the incision. So like a cough, a sneeze, anything, you're like, it feels so bad. Including laughter, which our lives are filled with. But those first few days, anytime somebody would start laughing or something funny would happen, I'd be like, everyone stop. no laughing, like, you know, it hurt so bad, like you'd have to just stop. And so much funny stuff happened. Anyway, so we get home, it's our first night home, and the weeks leading up to giving birth, I had actually already been sleeping on our couch. For whatever reason, it was just more comfortable. I think it's nice. I think it's because there's a back, and whenever you're so pregnant, you're like top heavy and your body tries to roll over when you're just trying to lay on your side. Anyways, I was most comfortable on the couch, and so we came home, and I wasn't really sure if I would be able to get on and off of our bed because it's taller, it's like higher up, and just like a bed is just a different beast. I don't know how to describe it. But so that first night, Carter has his CPAP. Actually, let me go back because I have a really funny story as to trying not to laugh. We were in the hospital. The first night, I guess I was able to stand up and pee on my own. I still needed help getting out of bed and standing. And the baby is in like the bassinet thing in between my bed and the bed Carter's sleeping on. And I know that this man is so exhausted, and he's got his CPAP on, and he has like a pillow over his head, and I'm like, and the baby's sleeping, so I'm like trying not to wake her up, but also I need him to wake up. So I was just, I'm like, Carter, 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 like getting louder and louder. And then finally I'm like yelling his name, and he is not waking up. And neither is this baby, but she's a great sleeper. She sleeps through everything, mostly because she probably, these crazy dogs. Anyways, I'm like, I feel so bad, but I have to throw a pillow at him to wake him up. Like I can't get up and like go tap him. Like he has to help me out of bed. So I grab one of my like 15 pillows, and I'm like, don't hit the baby, and like I'm like, try not to miss. Like I'm so out of it, so tired, and I hit him with the pillow, and this man levitates out of bed and is like, what? And I'm like trying not to laugh, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. That's hilarious, but I was like, I just have to get up and pee, and I need your help. And so anyways, another example of laughter, and it's a funny story. So we're home. I realize I've got to sleep. I'm gonna need to sleep on the couch to be the most comfortable. Obviously, I'm gonna have the baby in the living room with me, and Carter's got his CPAP in our bedroom, so he was like sleeping in there. But I was like, I love my husband so much and am used to sleeping with him, even though I had been sleeping on the couch out of necessity. I was like, I'm on drugs, I'm home for the first time, I'm tired. Like I was like, I just need to be a unit. I was like, I know the couch isn't as comfortable as the bed, but I was like, can you sleep out here with us, please? And he was like, of course. He brings the CPAP out here. We've got a giant couch that became our nest for the next 7 nights. Well, in days, because I stayed on the couch all day too, to recover. And like we put sheets on the bed, and he brought a CPAP out, and we had like our whole little system. Like when I had to get up and pee, he would move the ottoman for me. And then when I got back tucked in, he would push the ottoman back in, and we were just, and that night, before I even asked him, I was like, I started crying. I was so happy and exhausted. I was like, I have a husband who I can ask to sleep on the couch with me, and he's gonna come out here and he's gonna sleep on the couch, and we have, you know, I feel awful and icky right now, but I was like, we have this amazing family, like we like have a happy, healthy baby. Like I just was so grateful and just so emotional, and I'm like holding my stomach, like I'm like sobbing, but trying not to like put my whole body into it, because again, I'm sore. So I'm like, I'm going there crying, and I'm like, I'm not sad, I'm grateful. And you know, like and he's like, oh my gosh, she's crazy, but like whatever. So for 7 nights of healing and everything, we slept on the couch until I was able to sleep in the bed. And it was also 7 days since I pooped, and we were approaching, I wasn't uncomfortable, I just was mentally aware of it because I'm a great pooper, and the end of pregnancy I was pooping so many times a day, like you're peeing so many times a day, because there's just less room and it's all squished, that yeah. So it's approaching. You know, I'm like, all right, I know it's coming. I've heard some scary stories about it, whatever. I know that it's because of like the painkiller. I've been taking stool softener. So we got some Miralax, I had the castor oil from when I was trying to put myself into labor, and it's a specific castor oil. It's like a medical grade castor oil, I believe, that can be taken internally. It's not in the beauty section. Like if you go to like CVS or Walgreens or something, like it's in the pharmacy. And it's like in a dark blue bottle. Anyways, because I didn't know that, just so you know. I took Miralax, I drank castor oil. I am like so scared and desperate. I got a little syringe and I put castor oil in my butthole. And then I still had to wait a little bit before I could like start to get those, you know, feelings. And we have a squatty potty, so I'm like sitting on the squatty potty. Normally you're not supposed to like push your poop out. It could cause hemorrhoids. I never got hemorrhoids when I was pregnant or after. But let me tell you about this terrifying poop. And it was awful because it had been, you know, 7 days compacted in there. But I think if I had pooped any point before then, my body was not physically ready, because, you know, I'm still really sore and sensitive where my incision is, and, you know, pushing involves some abdominal work. Anyways, I have never been so scared in my life. This was like it was bad. I survived. I'm not trying to scare anyone, just I knew to mentally prepare for it. And I mean, I did all the things, and so I was like, had one hand braced on the back of the toilet. My knees are up because of the squatty potty, and I'm like holding on, and I mean, like, I am like quivering and trying to push it out. And I mean, it is so hard, and like, oh my gosh, my whole body's like convulsing. But I got some of it out, and then it just kind of, I get like the first like 3 poops were the hardest and scariest and painful. And then after that, it still would like take some time. Like I'd still have to like, it was like a whole like moment, like, don't bother me, I'm in the bathroom, I've got my squatty potty, you know, I'm like mentally preparing, you know, I'm like holding the thing. I think at one point, like the counter, my like sink is like right by the toilet, and I'm like got one hand right here, like I mean business. I survived it. And again, none of this was to scare anyone. Just a lot of crazy stuff can happen. I mean, I've never heard of having to have a baby pushed back up into you. It makes sense because I pushed her so far out, and then to cut me open, like to pull her out, she had to be farther back. I understand. But yeah, let's bring some awareness on that. But again, I'm so grateful and thankful to the midwives, the nurses, and all the medical staff that were making me feel safe and heard, and like explaining things to me, asking for consent. Like, I had such a positive experience. And even the nurses taking care of us after, like, some of them were like, you know, neutral, but most of them were just so above and beyond incredible. Like, one went to the cafeteria at like midnight and got me and Carter food, and like would just like hang out with us and have conversations. So like everyone was truly amazing. And the only, aside from, you know, my entire birth, I mean, I got to experience kind of 2 different births for real. But the fact that, the only thing that I really wanted to happen, that I wanted to get to do, was encapsulate my placenta. And actually, I even wanted to like take a chunk of it at least and put it in a smoothie, like raw, which I actually, because I did test positive for the strep B, I could not have it raw. I could only encapsulate it. And then, but they ended up not being able to save my placenta. They had it biopsied, which makes it like you can't encapsulate it then, I guess, if it could have been contaminated or something. So that was the only thing that like I didn't get to experience either. But like after it's all said and done, it's like it's such a minor detail at the end of the day. I'm healthy and happy, the baby's healthy and happy, my husband's healthy and happy, like we all, like it's great. So anyways, that is my crazy birth story. Bye dolls. Bye dolls / hot moms, because I'm gonna try to make my TikTok's gonna be hot mom energy. So bye hot moms. Okay, sorry, the lights are off. The baby's about to fall asleep, but one last thing I forgot to mention, because I'm vain and was worried about the C-section scar. It is so low. It's like literally, you know where your pubes grow? It's like an inch below that. So like in the middle. Like you can wear a really skimpy bikini and it would still be covered. I know that the midwives did mention that mine was unusually low. So like if I wanted to wear like the skimpiest bikini, like it might show a little bit, but like I wouldn't care. But like I can still wear like you could wear like a regular bikini and it not show. My friend had like her C-section scar is similar as well. And like if you, like I personally shave, so while it was still healing, I was shaving around it and kind of had like a vagina mustache, if you will. If that gives you some context as to where it was. That is all.